Hi, it's Amy, and I'm back once again with the Journal of Emily Shore. This is a journal of a teenage girl from the 1830s, published originally in 1891, and this is the 1891 edition right here. If you've not heard the previous entries, you can check out the Journal of Emily Shore playlist on my channel to start from the beginning. But we, at this point, are starting the 5th chapter. We are 70 pages into the journal, and we are beginning the year 1834. And Emily is now 14 years old. We'll be reading through her 14th and into her 15th year in chapter 5. And this should be fun because she's 14 now, and at least to me, even though at 13, we're technically teenagers, people are technically teenagers at 13. 13 is a very different age from 14 and 15. And I think, at 14 and 15, that's when you really become a teenager. So we'll see how Emily's personality shifts and shines through in the coming year, 1834. So she begins 1834 on January 4th. The weather is windy and occasionally rainy, but not very cold, and everything, as I said before, remarkably forward. The snowdrops are in bud, and the daffodils and crown imperials are sprouting. I did not mention a certain great curiosity, a piece of hawthorn, May in blossom, and with the leaves, was stuck on Christmas Day in Mr. Assel's pew. I saw a piece from the same bush as I suppose today. It was evidently not blackthorn. The blossom, the leaves, and even the hep of last year all proved it to be the real whitethorn or hawthorn, so no mistake was made in this particular. The same tree has been known to flower at Christmas several years ago. Withering mentions a singular tree of this kind called the Glastonbury thorn. It is at Glastonbury near Wells. It must be at least 200 years old and flowers twice a year, once at Christmas and the second time, I suppose, in spring. The flowers are as big as a sixpence. I do not know whether it exists at present. And so this seems to be something of a remarkably warm year. I'm guessing, this is near the southern part of the island, and so the winters aren't as harsh, but I would expect that they're not normally, getting these blossoming flowers in January. It's something of a puzzle to me because we certainly do not get blossoms of any kind in January here. Every once in a while there's a year where we get a warm spell where the temperature kind of flirts with freezing and gets above freezing for just enough days that you'll see buds starting to peek out on the trees, but then of course by the second week of January it'll be frigid and cold, and we'll be down at like -20, and that'll be completely gone. But it does happen every few years where we get an unseasonably warm December and Christmas period. But evidently there are blooming flowers here, because here we are on January 10th. Mr. Cust, who called today, told us that they had 24 kinds of flowers in their garden at Hawkney Hatley, all in bloom already. This seemed very astonishing, so I looked in our garden and counted 18 sorts in flower. China rose, Indian rose, Pyrus japonica, hepataka, primrose, polyanthus, daisy heath, polygala, cineraria purpurea, gentanella, heart's ease, auricula, snowdrop, American groundsel, stalk, double, and single, double wallflower, lustrucius. I never knew such a forward spring before, but we have neither aconites nor crocuses, which I am rather surprised at. The aconite is really the winter flowering hellebore. The real aconite is the monkshood or wolfsbane. The cineraria by the by, is a greenhouse plant, so I should not have included it. January 15th, the birch is in full bud, and I think the larch is. So is almost every tree. I examined today the bark of different firs and pines. I found that of the spruce to consist of distinct layers like pieces of wood, laid one on the other, which I never noticed before. January 18th, Saturday. The oak, ash, filbert, and elder are in bud, and the wild honeysuckle is in leaf. I only hope we shall not suffer for this forwardness in the cold winds of March. February 1st. The garden peas are 1/2 foot high, and the sweet peas 3 times that height. The periwinkles are in flower, except the daisy. I have not yet met with any wild plant in blossom. The birds appear to have been deceived by the mild weather, and have taken it for spring, for actually a thrush near Bedford had a week ago hatched into brood, and a robin too has built its nest and laid eggs. So this really is a remarkable winter. February 13th, Thursday. I heard the blackbird for the first time, though it has been singing this month. The skylark has sung ascending ever since January 10th, but continues to flock as it does in winter. Yesterday I saw a wryneck, this is a bird of passage which commonly appears about the end of March, a few days before the cuckoo. March 3rd, Monday. It is curious to observe how every bird chooses a particular place to sing. The thrush likes to be placed very high, commonly on a conspicuous branch. The blackbird is, in general, well hidden in a bush. The cuckoo always so. The nightingale warbles, flitting from spray to spray, sometimes in very exposed places, as well as in thickly wooded ones. The blackcap I have heard too, little to say much about it, but it seems to perch about 10 to 12 feet high, and often flits about like the nightingale. The yellowhammer sits in a hedge pretty high up. The titmouse sings at intervals, hanging by his claws with his head downwards. It is very remarkable that there are no water birds which sing. Another thing to be observed is the habit of birds in their nests. Everyone knows that no 2 birds build nests exactly alike. But in addition to this, almost every bird builds in a different situation. The fauvet builds generally in a hedge, but I once found a nest about 14 feet from the ground in a tree near the house. The robin builds carelessly in a bush or low tree near the dwellings of men, and takes no pains to conceal his nest. The yellowhammer builds on a hedge bank, the chaffinch commonly on the branch of the holly, elder, or nut tree, the lark and wagtail always on the ground, the redstart in an old wall, the chimney swallow in chimneys, the house martin under the eaves of houses, the sand martin in sand rocks or high banks, the ox-eye and tomtit in holes or walls or trees, the thrush high in trees, generally firs or larches, the blackbird well concealed in bushy places, the nightingale in banks, the ringstove usually at the top of tall trees, the rook, jay, and magpie much the same, the common sparrow almost anywhere, provided it is near a house. March 13th, Thursday. I happened to be in the wood and on the heath at 6 this evening, that is to say at sunset, and I observed that the thrush, robin, yellowhammer, and golden-crowned wren were all singing, and the blackbird, tomtit, linnet, and long-tailed titmouse chirping, and the ringdove cooing at that late hour. The evening was beautifully calm, though cold and sunless. March 17th, Monday. I have been much vexed today by hearing a new song without being able to find out certainly what bird made it. What can this bird be? I know all the English songsters except 4 or 5 that have only 1 or 2 notes, 3 more that only sing at night, and lastly the tree lark, titlark, woodlark, greater redpoll, and garden warbler. It must certainly be one of these last 5. It cannot be the tree lark, because that bird sings ascending, nor the titlark, since that bird does not much variety, and mine has a great deal. As for the woodlark, it sings only on summer evenings. It must therefore be either the redpoll or garden warbler. March 25th, Tuesday. I discovered in my walk today a very pretty little spot in a kind of hollow below the cow pasture and the other fields between Woodbury and Everton. It was a large orchard on a high grassy island surrounded by a piece of water, which is in most parts perfectly clear and bright and about 40 or 50 feet wide. On one side the channel is nearly dry and filled with rushes. The banks are very high all round. On the other side, shaded with blackthorn and filbert, On the inner side, they are thinly covered with the dog's mercury, primroses, bluebells, a few cowslips, and splendid dark blue violets. There are also very entangled thickets of thorns, brambles, and briars, and several tall ash trees and willows. This spot is haunted by a great many different birds: blackbirds, missel thrushes, rooks, carrion crows, robins, wrens, fawvets, long-tailed titmice, a handsome kite, and above all, willow wrens. So that's quite a lot of birds, and it's so interesting to be reading about this particular part of the world because evidently their winters are very mild, and evidently the birds are quite different from what I'm used to in my part of the world. March 26th, Wednesday. I know by sight as many as 31 of the smaller birds, including all not bigger than the missel thrush. They are the following: starling, missel thrush, thrush, blackbird, nuthatch, creeper, garden grosbeak, sparrow, goldfinch, chaffinch, spotted flycatcher, skylark, the three wagtails, nightingale, redbreast, redstart, fawvet, blackcap, whitethroat, willow wren, golden-crested wren, common wren, oxeye, tomtit, long-tailed tit, swallow martin, sand martin swift, 23 of which frequent my garden. April 15th, Tuesday. It has been for some time intended that I shall go to Casterton to learn dancing and French at Stamford. This was the day fixed for my departure. And maybe we'll leave it there because it sounds like we are going to shift from talk of birds to talk of dancing and French lessons, which will be quite exciting because I'm sure she's reaching the point in her education where her parents, perhaps herself, are starting to think more about what kind of young lady, what kind of adult woman she's going to become, and how to, quote, finish her, to use an old-fashioned term, to prepare her for her adult life. And unfortunately, we know that she didn't really get into that adult life because she did die quite young. If I'm remembering right from the introduction, at the age of 19 or 20, something along those lines. So she doesn't really make it beyond these teenage years, but I think we are about to see a little bit of a shift in the content here. So I will leave it at that for now.